Communism and National Socialism, two powerful ideologies, emerged in the 20th century. They promised a better future but left a trail of destruction and despair. Understanding their core tenets and historical context is crucial to grasping their impact on the world. Communism, championed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, envisioned a classless society. It sought to abolish private property and establish collective ownership of the means of production. The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917 brought communism to the forefront. National Socialism, or Nazism, took root in Germany after World War I. Fueled by national humiliation and economic turmoil, it combined extreme nationalism, racism, and anti-Semitism. Led by Adolf Hitler, the Nazi Party rose to power in 1933. While both were totalitarian, communism and National Socialism differed significantly in their core values and methods. Understanding these differences is essential to unraveling their complex histories. Communism and National Socialism diverged sharply in their economic approaches. Communist ideology advocated for a centrally planned economy, aiming to eliminate private property and distribute wealth equally among the people. The state controlled all aspects of production and distribution, theoretically ensuring everyone's basic needs were met. However, this system often resulted in inefficiency, shortages, and a lack of individual initiative. In contrast, National Socialism pursued a mixed economy. While maintaining private ownership, the Nazi regime exerted significant control over industries. The government directed production towards military build-up and self-sufficiency, prioritizing national interests over individual economic freedom. This approach initially yielded economic recovery, but ultimately led to exploitation, forced labor, and war-driven economic instability. Both systems prioritized state control over individual economic freedom. However, their motivations and methods differed significantly. Communism aimed for an egalitarian society, while National Socialism prioritized national power and self-sufficiency, even at the expense of individual rights and economic well-being. Both communist and National Socialist regimes placed immense importance on military power. They viewed a strong military as essential for defending their ideology and expanding their influence. However, their military strategies and organizational structures differed significantly. Communist military doctrine emphasized mass mobilization and large-scale ground offensives. The Red Army, for example, relied on overwhelming numerical superiority and a willingness to sustain heavy casualties to achieve victory. This approach reflected communism's focus on class struggle and the belief in the inevitable triumph of the proletariat. National Socialist military doctrine, on the other hand, embraced the concept of blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This strategy relied on speed, surprise, and coordinated attacks using tanks, aircraft, and infantry to overwhelm the enemy quickly. The Wehrmacht, Nazi Germany's military force, achieved early successes with blitzkrieg but ultimately failed to adapt to changing battlefield conditions. Both ideologies utilized military force to advance their goals. However, their strategic approaches reflected their core values. Communism's belief in mass mobilization and National Socialism's emphasis on speed and decisive action. Both communism and National Socialism established totalitarian regimes that exerted absolute control over all aspects of society. They suppressed dissent, eliminated opposition, and utilized propaganda and terror to maintain power. However, their methods of control and the justifications for their rule differed significantly. Communist regimes, based on Marxist-Leninist ideology, claimed to represent the dictatorship of the proletariat. They established single-party states, with the Communist Party holding a monopoly on power. Secret police forces, such as the KGB in the Soviet Union, suppressed dissent and eliminated perceived enemies of the state. National Socialism, rooted in racial ideology, established a Führerprinzip, or leader principle, which granted Hitler absolute authority. The Nazi Party controlled all aspects of German life, utilizing propaganda, censorship, and the Gestapo, the secret police, to enforce conformity and eliminate opposition. Both systems were inherently authoritarian and relied on repression to maintain control. However, their justifications differed. Communism claimed to act on behalf of the working class, while National Socialism promoted a racially based hierarchy. Life under communist and National Socialist regimes differed drastically for ordinary citizens. While both systems imposed severe restrictions on individual liberties, their social structures and treatment of specific groups varied significantly. Under communism, the state controlled education, healthcare, and employment. The emphasis was on collectivism and social equality, with the government providing basic necessities but often limiting personal freedoms. However, in practice, communist regimes often struggled to provide adequate living standards for their citizens. In contrast, life under National Socialism was defined by racial ideology. The regime promoted Aryan supremacy while persecuting Jews, Roma, LGBTQ individuals, and other groups deemed undesirable. The Holocaust, the systematic genocide of European Jews, stands as the most horrific example of the Nazi regime's brutality. Both systems severely restricted individual liberties. However, communism emphasized social equality, while National Socialism enforced a rigid racial hierarchy, leading to the persecution and murder of millions. Section 6. Forging the Nation: Identity and Ideology. Both communism and National Socialism sought to forge a strong sense of national identity among their citizens. However, their approaches and the foundations of their ideologies differed markedly. Communism aimed to transcend national borders, promoting a global proletarian revolution and the eventual establishment of a classless, stateless society. However, in practice, communist regimes often embraced nationalism as a tool to consolidate power and mobilize their populations. National Socialism, in contrast, was fundamentally built on extreme nationalism. The Nazi regime glorified the German nation and its supposed Aryan heritage while demonizing other groups, particularly Jews, as threats to national unity and purity. This racialized nationalism fueled the regime's aggressive expansionist policies and ultimately led to World War II. Both ideologies utilized concepts of national identity for their purposes. However, communism's vision of a class-based global revolution contrasted sharply with National Socialism's emphasis on racial purity and national dominance. Section 7. Echoes of the Past. Communism and National Socialism today. While both communism and National Socialism ultimately failed as political and economic systems, their legacies continue to shape the world today. Understanding their lasting impact is crucial for navigating contemporary political discourse and addressing the dangers of totalitarian ideologies. Communism, despite its failures, continues to inspire some leftist movements and remains the official ideology of countries like China, Cuba, and Vietnam. However, these regimes often blend communist principles with elements of capitalism and nationalism, creating hybrid systems that defy easy categorization. National Socialism, forever tainted by the horrors of the Holocaust, is widely condemned as a repugnant ideology. However, far-right and neo-Nazi groups still exist, exploiting nationalist sentiments and promoting xenophobia, racism, and anti-Semitism. While the spectre of these ideologies may no longer haunt the world as they once did, their echoes persist, reminding us of the fragility of democracy and the ever-present dangers of extremism. Section 8. Disturbing Parallels: When Ideologies Converge. Despite their fundamental differences, communism and National Socialism exhibited disturbing parallels in their methods and practices. Both regimes employed propaganda, censorship, and terror to control their populations and silence dissent. Both systems created vast networks of informants and secret police forces to monitor citizens, suppress opposition, and eliminate perceived enemies of the state. They utilized show trials, arbitrary arrests, and imprisonment without trial to instill fear and enforce conformity. Concentration camps, initially established by the Soviet Union as a tool for political repression, reached their horrific apex under the Nazi regime. The Holocaust stands as a chilling reminder of the dangers of totalitarianism and the dehumanizing consequences of unchecked hatred and prejudice. While their ideologies differed, both systems resorted to similar methods of repression and violence to maintain control and silence opposition, highlighting the inherent dangers of unchecked power. Section 9, A Legacy of Tyranny, Lessons for the Future. The legacies of communism and National Socialism offer stark warnings about the dangers of totalitarian ideologies. Their histories highlight the importance of defending democratic values, protecting individual liberties, and combating all forms of extremism. Understanding the historical context, core tenets, and devastating consequences of these ideologies is crucial for preventing their resurgence and combating the spread of hatred, intolerance, and authoritarianism in the 21st century. We must remain vigilant in defending freedom of speech, protecting the rights of minorities, and upholding the rule of law. Only by learning from the mistakes of the past can we hope to build a more just and equitable future for all.